Good afternoon. Uh, Welcome to the first international conference on business law and ethics, conflict or coherence. While discussing with Macquarie University about what kind of theme we should take up for the conference, we thought probably we should look at this triangle. On one side, you have got the rule makers, the legal side of the story. Other side, what ought to be the ethical aspect of the story, and then the business part of it. Probably a business management student's life goes between these three dots, and he tries to connect these three dots for achieving success. So that's what the plan that we had, that we should have a topic on business law ethics. That's the reason why we thought we should also invite professors from the law school, professors from the business school, and experts in the area of ethics to come and deliver their talk about how do they see these conflicting three dots that we have got there and how to connect all of them together. Since MBA second year students will be graduating in a couple of months period of time, this is like giving them a sermon to them about how their life would be. We are fortunate to have Professor Rajkumar. Despite his busy schedule, he is present here to deliver the inaugural address. We have with us also Professor Nicholas Brick, Pro Vice Chancellor of Macquarie University, and Professor Debashish Chatterjee, who is the Director General of International Management Institute. Professor Chatterjee is an expert in the area of Indian ethos and ethics. Other than being a great trainer and professor and director of one of the IIMs, he's also a great author. And he writes about different aspects of life, including one of his latest books on Invincible Arjuna. That's what he has talked about. Now I will request Professor Rajkumar to deliver his inaugural address. Professor Rajkumar, please.
A very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to apologize for the slight delay in starting this program. I know that our students took a valiant ride from Sonipat to reach Delhi, and I am grateful to them for taking their time out to be away from campus. Thank you to the faculty members also for being present here. At the outset, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished colleagues and friends from the Macquarie University and the Macquarie University's Business School. In particular, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Professor Nicole Brigg, Pro Vice Chancellor of Macquarie University, the Dean of the Business School, as well as Mr. Abizar Merchant, Director of the South Asia, Middle East of Macquarie International. It's also a very special moment for us because this is the first joint conference that we are hosting with Macquarie University. It also marks the occasion of the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Jindal Global Business School as well as the Macquarie University's Business School. It's also, I think it's the topic of the conference. You could organize this conference in most parts of the world today, and definitely in India. You could also organize this conference a decade ago. Issues surrounding business, law, and ethics are at the heart of the way companies and corporations and business enterprises are functioning. And I like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Jindal Global Business School and Macquarie University for conceiving the theme of the conference, in particular Dean Professor Tapan Panda for his leadership in initiating this conference and collaborating with Macquarie University. I'm also particularly grateful to Professor Debashish Chatterjee, Director General of the International Management Institute, for accepting our invitation to deliver the keynote address. Professor Chatterjee, as Professor Panda mentioned, is a very distinguished scholar, an inspiring institution builder who has made significant contributions to the advancement of management education as well as research in a number of fields, and I appreciate his presence on this occasion. I will take a few minutes to briefly bring the context of this relationship that we are forging today. As some of you know, our university has been at the vanguard of promoting a number of relationships around the world, but Australia is a very important destination for our students. I do believe that the relationship between India and Australia at various levels has taken a new shape. Australia has recognized the Asian century in many ways, and that's part of the effort to build substantive relationship between Australia and India at the larger multilateral level. But as a university which is deeply committed to promoting global education, we strongly believe that there are huge opportunities for Indian students and Jindal students to pursue higher education in Australia. The Center for India-Australia Studies that OP Jindal Global University established a few years ago under the leadership of Professor Sean Starr and many other colleagues, including Professor Laknath Jaisinghe, who is Vice Dean of the Jindal Global Business School, and others who are advancing this collaboration, will make a huge impact on the future of higher education in India. I think it is fair to say, I was telling our colleagues from Macquarie University a couple of hours ago that increasingly the global environment today has prepared and positioned Australia with certain unique advantages and provides opportunities for our students. I know that the MBA students who are present here may be thinking about their higher education. Both Brexit as well as Trump had given opportunities for Australian higher education to be part of a new imagination. The leading universities of Australia, such as Macquarie University, has positioned itself to develop an intellectual presence of their institutions in India. This conference today that we are hosting together with our business school is part of a series of initiatives that has been planned, and I believe that such relationships, including the future conferences, lectures, workshops, seminars, student mobility programs, dual degree programs that we intend to advance with Macquarie University, will provide a stronger presence of Jindal Global University at Macquarie and vice versa. For all the students of MBA and the Jindal Global Business School who are thinking about higher studies, I strongly encourage you to consider Australia as your preferred destination. Having visited and spent time in Australia on numerous occasions, I can say that the Australian higher education system is a robust higher education system. Every year we see the leading University of Australia occupying the highest ranks in the higher education rankings, such as the Times Higher Education, the QS World Rankings. Australian universities are also part of a diverse community of scholars and a higher education ecosystem which is advanced in every sense of the word. Australia as a society, like India, is part of a pluralistic society. It very strongly believes in diversity. The language, the English language is also part of the Australian tradition in that sense. And also I think that it is fair to say that generations of Indian students who have been to Australia have had very positive experiences from that country. Beyond the educational experience that our students will have being at Macquarie University, I also think that the broader immigration policy in Australia has enabled international students, including Indian students, to have a more long-term perspective to their higher education. It provides opportunities for you to stay at least for 2 years post your studies, which also gives professional opportunities for you to pursue higher education and then more professional engagement within Australia. So all these things make Australia a very special place for higher education. It is also fair to say that the Australian higher education system has provided a much more, I would say, favorable environment for international students. It has welcomed international students from many countries around the world. The international students in particular contribute a significant a substantial percentage of Australia's GDP, and because of which Australia has taken this internationalization of higher education far more seriously than many other countries. It is prepared to take international students on board and has created an environment, a congenial environment, a favorable ecosystem for hosting international students. I would also like to mention that studying in Australia is not just about being part of a university. I think, needless to say, while my colleague Laknath may not like it, cricket does form a very important part of the India-Australia imagination. While it should not be the only focus of our relationship, but it is, if you go to the United States, you won't be able to play cricket. So you need to seriously think about Australia, and I want to be an advocate for this, and we have been an advocate for this, not because of the fact that we have these wonderful partners such as Macquarie University. We strongly believe that Australian universities have something unique to offer to Indian and Jindal students that universities in other parts of the world may not offer. It just so happened that both the Brexit phenomenon and the current administration in the United States has only further aggravated that possibility more strongly, and Australia is better prepared to host students. We are in discussions with Macquarie University to develop dual degree program which will enable our students to pursue higher education there. We also intend to have student exchange programs, even short-term study abroad programs, also have inward mobility of Macquarie students into India and to Jindal. Some of the discussions that we've had today and will continue to have today and in the next several weeks and months will also enable the possibility of Australian and Macquarie academics to come and spend some time at Jindal and be part of a joint conference that we are hosting with research as its basis. I sincerely hope that our faculty members can collaborate with academics from Macquarie University to advance their research agenda. Many of the research centers that the Jindal Global Business School has have a possibility to work with the scholars and practitioners at the Macquarie University's Business School. With those few words, I once again want to welcome all of you to what is promising to be an important conference on a very significant theme. Almost all areas of business today in India are affected and indeed challenged by the conundrum of law and ethics and also governance more broadly. And the question really is, to what extent our companies and corporations are prepared to take a lead in it? To what extent we are prepared to challenge the status quo of institutions in relation to creating transparency and accountability of the functioning of corporations. For those business students who are thinking about issues surrounding ethics, it is no longer an option for you to consider. It's not an elective that you may choose to take. It ought to become a way of your life. It's not just about doing business in a transparent manner. It also creates risks associated with conducting yourself in an unethical manner or engaging in acts that are in contravention of law. It will land you up in jail, and you need to be conscious of that. It's also fair to recognize the importance of the role of business in society more broadly. I think I will strongly encourage you to read a book entitled What Money Can't Buy: The Moral Limits of Markets by a Harvard political philosopher named Michael Sandel. And Michael Sandel has talked about the importance of building a society that is not just a society where everything that we do is governed by monetary terms. He talks about and he critiques that society and says that if everything that we do is measured in monetary terms, the consequence of such a society is twofold. One is, we create an unequal society, and second, we create a corrupt society. Both inequality and high levels of corruption are consequence of a society which is measured in monetary terms. He distinguishes a knowledge economy from a market economy from a market society. He is in favor of a market economy, but not a market society. And there he concludes the book by saying that there ought to be certain things which money can't buy and markets can't dictate. The global economic crisis, the Wall Street crisis, all of this have only triggered and indeed put pressure on all of us to think about this. So this conference is organized at a very critical time, and once again, wish you the very best for the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar. You can understand how Professor Rajkumar works and the kind of energy that he has in igniting your minds and thoughts on this topic. Now let's move to the next task. Next task is a very difficult task for me because introducing Professor Chatterjee means it's a 23-year-old story. So 1995 being in his class to 2000 being his colleague, and then 2 years before in Gurgaon discussing about Arjuna at my home. And Professor Chatterjee has always impressed with his original ideas and thought about Indian ethos and the way he looks at the world there. I got the chance to hear him first time when he talked about his first book, Leading Consciously, and then subsequently he has done 17 books on different aspects of that. I have to do some introduction, that's why I'll do it. Otherwise, I know it is very difficult to do the job. Professor Chatterjee has just taken over as the Director General of IMI, which is a corporate sponsored institute. But prior to that, Professor Chatterjee was the director of IIM Kozhikode. Prior to that, he was professor at IIM Lucknow. Professor Bakul Dholakia was the earlier Director General of IMI, who was the ex-director of IIM Ahmedabad. Professor Chatterjee taught leadership at Harvard University, at IIM Calcutta, Lucknow, Kozhikode for over 2 decades. He has been awarded the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship twice for pre-doctoral and postdoctoral work at Kennedy School of Government and Harvard University. His published work includes 17 books. I don't know whether there's an update number or not, so since 17, so I'll go by that. 17 books such as Leading Consciously, which has got a foreword from Professor Peter Senge, Timeless Leadership, that have been translated into several international languages. He has trained more than 15,000 managers globally in Fortune 100 corporations and over 15,000 school principals and teachers. That is where you can find out some similarity in thought between Professor Rajkumar and Professor Chatterjee, looking into school principals and building leadership at school principal levels. He has served as leadership coach to political leaders and CEOs of major Indian organizations. He has served as the dean of an international business school in Singapore, a pioneer in the field of Asian models in leadership. Professor Chatterjee is former director of IIM Kozhikode and a tenured professor and dean at IIM Lucknow. He is credited with transforming IIM Kozhikode from an obscure regional school to an institution of national impact and global recognition. Let's welcome Professor Devashish Chatterjee.
The greatest warrior known to man was a brave heart, a romantic, a student, a master, a sage. When heroes leave behind footprints on the sands of time, they become legends. An inspiring new book invites you to visit 9 precious milestones on Arjuna's hero path. Astonishing insights and lessons for the 21st century warriors. Hidden talents with the right temperament. Develop situational intelligence. Learn when less is more and the art of catching your butterfly mind. Practice small work with great love. Know that resentment is a mental muscle. Learn the art of undoing. Follow the path of choiceless love. Resolve the mutiny of a million egos and learn how a fighter becomes a warrior. Awaken to your invincible self. With exciting stories that shape the ultimate warrior. Learn from Arjuna to create your own hero path in the 21st century. The new bestseller from Devashish Chatterjee, India's foremost voice on transformational leadership.
Professor C. Rajkumar, my erstwhile colleagues and dear friends, Professor Tapan Panda sitting here and Professor Pankaj Gupta sitting there. Very distinguished guests from Macquarie University, Professor Nicole Briggs, and the students of a very illustrious institution that has come up thanks to the kind of charismatic leadership that you have, in virtually no time, right where uh, the Battle of Kurukshetra was supposed to have been fought, not very far from there. I have to compete with the fragrance of impending lunch and the foundation of ethics, and you know which one will win. So I'll be mercifully brief, but as eloquent as I possibly can, because I have also come here for some lunch. All right, so you can imagine I'm just as hungry as you are. Let me whet your appetite with simulating a journey of 700 verses that we popularly know as the Bhagavad Gita. You know this is a book that needs no introduction in India, but for our overseas visitors, the Gita is pretty much a conversation between a hesitant hero and his mentor. His name is Krishna, the hero's name is Arjuna. And the hero has a performance breakdown right in the middle of a battlefield in Kurukshetra, not far away from where the University of O.P. Jindal is. And the hero needs some help. And then a conversation starts, and the conversation is right in the middle, pitched right in the middle of the battle. And the conversation takes on a life of its own and becomes a standalone best-selling book forever in the Indian context. You might want to go back to that book later on, but I'll tease you with a few appetizers. So what is this hesitant hero worried about? He's worried about the same ethical dilemma that we all have. Is it appropriate to go to war? You might wonder, here is a war that is being fought, and all wars necessarily have consequences that are not so good. But they have causes too, that are sometimes righteous causes, and you have to go to war. The war that we fight on the field of Kurukshetra is the lesser of the wars. The real war is this million mutinies that's going on in our heads and hearts. The polarity of the head and the heart. The polarity of quality and quantity. The polarity of inclusive and the exclusive. And you can see constantly we are pitched in some kind of a battle or the other. And so Gita appeals both to the inward war and the war out there. Unlike the Chinese art of war, the Gita's quest is very different. The Chinese art of war is about the mind and its strategic inflections. It's about strategy and tactics. We all know the Chinese art of war. What we do not know, the Indians too have the art of war, in which case the journey is from a fighter called Arjuna to a warrior that Arjuna could be. And that journey is an evolutionary journey that we all are invited to go on to. And ever since we were born, we have been hearing about the Gita. Sometimes it serves as a post-mortem accessory. Somebody dies, you give a copy of the Gita. Most of it is unread. But now, times are changing. People are beginning to see value in a text that is largely talking about ethical action. And the word that actually encompasses the ethical action, and that is all the ingredients of whatever is put on the board, business, law, and ethics, conflict or coherence. Gita resolves this issue of conflict and coherence right in the middle of the conflict. And Gita talks about two kinds of dharmas. One is Sanatana dharma. Sanatana means absolute values, ethics. Killing a person. Absolute, it's absolute. But there are contextual values. We know that taking a bribe is not a good idea, but contextually, again very close to where the university is, a bunch of Haryana farmers of a panchayat writes to the Prime Minister of the country, complaining about bribes. Now, they're not worried about bribe, but they are worried about inequitable distribution of the bribes. That's what the complaint is about. You see, this is contextual. You assume bribe giving is okay, but for henceforth, what do we do going forward? When lawyers take up cases, they are defending the indefensible. I remember I was in the United States of America, and O.J. Simpson thing was one of the most televised, trials in history of humankind. And most people seem to know that O.J. Simpson was guilty, but he was pronounced not guilty on 2 counts. And it created a whole, racial divide, furor in America, and we were just wondering what is this all about. And then you realize that there's a contextual part of it. About absolutes, you can really do much. If you are part of an absolute like gravity, set of rules, you can't do much about it, but about the contextual aspect, where ethics seem to have a relative aspect to it, that's where the classroom debates, classroom conversations really start. So we are using the word dharma here because Krishna talks to Arjuna about dharma. Not many people have understood the word dharma. They think it's pretty much like a intellectual sophistry, like an ethical code. Dharma is very different from the Ten Commandments. You know, the great masters, the realized rishis of India understood that Ten Commandments, however well-intentioned they are, will work only to a point. It's like saying to somebody, please don't think of a pink elephant. Okay? And immediately the mind will think of a pink elephant. No, you don't do. You know, the Ten Commandments will begin with, you shan't do. Now, the moment I'm told I'm not supposed to do something, the mind registers this as some curiosity values. The mind will somehow explode. And it never works beyond a point because we have never understood the mind before we talk about ethical, moral sort of, and this is where the problem starts in most ethics classes. So where dharma is not an esoteric argument or intellectual sophistry, dharma is a living principle. And that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna. It's like a flower blooming into a fragrance. Now it is a very natural thing. Dharma does not grow on the soil of persuasion in the classroom. It is not an artificial flower that you spray from the outside and the spray is gone, and then no, it's not something that you inject as moral values in a cognitive context. Dharma is something that grows with you. Once your life flourishes, once you understand life, once the horizons of perceptions of your own life blossoms, then you understand the value of dharma. So dharma is something that you are, not what you're supposed to do or think. And that's the difference between ethics. I have a problem with this word called business ethics, and it has been around doing rounds in the world. Now, is business ethics a different kind of ethics? Is it a brand of ethics that is separate from other kinds of ethics? As though what is possible in business is not possible somewhere else. It's the same issue as, bribes will be given and taken. How much? Equity is the issue. I was with Indra Nui in Dubai a few months back, and she says, this stakeholder theory is not really working because we need an envelope of purpose around the stakeholder. Otherwise, the stakeholders is a very limited version of ethics. Now, we are talking about big names in the corporate world that says this whole model that is mentally crafted to put together something that works like an ethical principle, but it's an inconvenient truth. That ethics is fundamental, business comes later. I can give you tons of examples why this is so. But what I'll talk about is that this mental model of ethics that says something like honesty is the best policy, it requires a Gandhi to question, if honesty is the best policy, if it is no longer the best policy, shall I abandon honesty? No, that's an inconvenient truth. So I will abandon honesty. I remember in our college days, there was a film, I'm pretty sure the film is around even today, called The Parable of the Sadhu that was being taught at the Harvard Business School as part of ethics course. And a very formidable professor of Harvard Law School used to be one of those anchors for this particular film called Parable of the Sadhu. In the stories as follows, some investment bankers and other people from North America come to decide to go on the Himalayan journey, and they meet a sadhu who is almost about to die. And they all take their turns to take care of the sadhu, but not at the cost of their reaching their goal. So they do whatever they can and want, but beyond a point, nobody takes ultimate responsibility for a man who is about to die. And then there's a moral dilemma, and the Harvard Business School, Kennedy School, medical school, all of them have gathered together and they're debating this whole issue. And the question raised by the anchor is, if instead of the sadhu, if this was a blonde woman, would the response of the rescuers been slightly different? All right? And I was sitting in this audience and I was asked a question, what does the word sadhu really mean? And my answer to this was, sadhu means good. So is good the opposite of bad? I said, no. This is not the good that is opposite of bad. See, this classification of good and bad is a mental model. The good that we are talking about does not flourish in the dissecting mind. It flourishes as an expression of life. Good is about being sensitive, like the fragrance of a flower. So what is good does not need a certificate. What I am doing when others are not watching me is the fragrance of goodness. Goodness that is crafted, that's a social posture. That is done under coercive conditions is a good that is not likely to remain good. Do you see this? So the problem again of teaching ethics and talking about it is that we are often talking at the level where ethics becomes purely a construct. As long as I'm not caught, I'm going to continue to cheat. Now, if you catch me, then there is another discussion. But when nobody is watching me, do I have the fragrance of life that tells me this is not what I'm supposed to do? And how does a teacher take a student to that point? How does a Krishna take Arjuna to that point where Arjuna recognizes without having to be told as to what is good, what is bad? You know, it's not an instruction on 10 commandments, it's a description of what life is all about. So the entire continuum of the journey of the Gita is the fundamental goodness that flourishes only when you know who you really are. So the instruction is not about what Arjuna should do, but about who Arjuna really is, and that is the Gita. And I'm going to give you only 3 elements from that book, which might make sense to you. And first of these elements is purpose, which is dharma. And Krishna says to Arjuna, look, I'm a social scientist, I'm not a physical scientist, so I know that there are electrons and protons, but there are also morons in this universe. And one such moron is Duryodhana. Now, what is a moron? A moron is a particle of matter that is unduly agitated and behaves in a manner that is incoherent with the whole. So Duryodhana is challenging Arjuna. He says, I am a land grabber and I am also an Eve teaser, and I refuse to give your piece of land unless you fight me. And Arjuna says, come on, what's the point in fighting a cousin? And my teachers and gurus who are aligned on the other side, and how do I go to war with people I have lived, my family? And Krishna says, look, this is not a fight of your ego with a cousin. This is a fight for redemption. This is a fight for dharma, for justice. It doesn't matter who you are, who the protagonists are. When a moron meets a proton, the proton must and should triumph, because the proton follows coherence. Moron is just a sort of, so the moron is not such a bad thing, but these moronic behaviors have to be seen in the context of, so if you look at it, so look at the broad spectrum notion. So when you see a thief who has stolen money, dharma says, well, the thief is doing his dharma all right. He is in the pursuit of happiness just as you are, except that he is a little more zealous in that pursuit. He's broken a few things which he has to mend. So you don't label him a thief forever. His behavior is what you call not acceptable. So he has to pay for that behavior. There is a consequence of that behavior. But don't label the thief a thief, because if you do so, you're doing just an injustice to this extraordinary human potential where a thief can be a potential saint. And we see those transformations in all traditions, including Indian traditions. I have some more time, few more minutes before we go for lunch. So the first is dharma, and dharma is essentially not about pursuit of a singular goal. It is about knowing how to integrate many goals. Now, this is dharma. I'll give you examples from the corporate world, a couple of them. J.R.D. Tata is an icon of Indian, business world, and when he was about 50, 60 years back, when he was going through this plant in Jamshedpur, he saw some workers shouting slogans and agitating against some management policy. So Tata asked his HR head, please tell me, why are they shouting about? And HR says, sir, they just want to demonstrate because you're here, they want to make a point, otherwise most of the demands are met. This is an unjustified thing, they shouldn't be doing this. Tata says, I have no problem with their shouting. They have a right to shout. It's a democratic country. But I'm worried about the fact that they're shouting under the hot sun and they have no water to drink. Can you give them a shade under which they can shout and give them some lime water so they can shout and, And shouting stopped for the next 50 years because all of a sudden, the workers began to realize that the goal of the man who owns this organization and our goal have a point of convergence. So conflict becomes a very rational for really looking at the incoherence that is within you, in your own model, mental model. And when you sort that out, you see coherence was just there, just the other side of it. Let's take another example from another icon of India. His name is Gandhi. He's traveling by a train. One of his shoes falls down on the railway track. Now, if I was in place of Gandhi and the train was moving away, one of my shoes on the track, I would be worried, I would be mentally upset, and I would try to stop the train or at least complain. Gandhi does none of that. He takes the other of the pair and he throws it on the track. Now, the man who stands next to Gandhi says, what the hell did you do? He said, the poor man who will now have a pair, will have a pair to wear. One is of no value to me, one is of no value to him. Look at what the consequence of the decision is. What a Gandhi does is he expands the decision space where a conflict becomes coherence. Because his mental model is very different from yours and mine. So purpose is nothing but engaging goals of many other people. Until their goals are fulfilled, my goal cannot be fulfilled. In a collective system, that's what it means. In a corporate world, that's what it means. Yet we are trained to enter the world with a self-aggrandizing model of making money, extracting resources and compensation. And see how that collides with the very purpose for which a business is put on. So there's a fundamental flaw here that has to be addressed. And this is a question that I'm raising. Think of anything in nature, it follows dharma. Look at a spider's web, a beautiful tapestry of silken craftsmanship. Now, a spider's nervous system is not sophisticated enough. Spider's mind is not sophisticated enough to create that web of extraordinary dexterity. Yet, when a spider works in coherence with its ecology, a spider's web is the result. Look at a monarch butterfly that is flying from the Amazonian forests to North America. Generations of that butterfly go and come back to the same tree from where they started originally in the Amazonian forest. Now, how do they get their navigation skills? They get it because they work in dharma. They work in tandem with their ecology. Look at your own heart that is beating 72 times a minute, a lakh of times a day, and if you live to be 68, 2.6 billion times, your heart would have actually done this without taking a break. How can the heart do it? Because the heart's goal is coherent with the goal of the rest of the body. So when you're meditating, the heart rate will go down. If you're jogging, it will go up. So the heart is calibrating its movement with whatever the body's demands are. So if you stand for so many other people's goals, automatically the quality of energy that you will experience will go because you are responsible. So that is what dharma does to you. It gives you the energy of the ecology that supports you in your righteous actions. And that's why dharma is no longer an esoteric intellectual principle, but it's a living principle. Life is impossible without it. Life is impossible without it. Okay, so where do you find dharma? People said, is it possible to then understand what life is all about? And that's the fundamental question that the Gita actually raises. The next question is about karma, and it's called performance. But the word karma is actually added to another expression called yoga. So together it becomes karma yoga. Karma yoga means my action has to have a connection with something larger than my own personal goal for achieving a result for my sake. You may ask, so what does that really translate in business principles? You go to a little station in Ahmedabad. You see a guy who is polishing your shoes. He knows karma yoga as much as a professor or a pandit does. What he does, as he's polishing your shoes, he's carrying a copy of the Times of India, English edition. And as he polishes the shoes and he hands over that little paper to the man whose shoe he's polishing, after the job is over, you go to him and say, do you read English? No. Why did you buy a copy of the Times of India? Well, I have to give it to the person whose shoe I polish. He reads, but you don't read. Why have you bought the newspaper? He said, he's bored when I'm polishing his shoes. So if I can hand him over the newspaper, he has something to do. So he goes beyond his expertise to deliver a value that connects him with his customer in a way that just polishing the shoes will not be. So your skill, your craftsmanship, your competence has to be connected with an attitude and orientation to the one you're serving, to the market, so that your expertise becomes flexpertise. Now this is the world of flexpertise. You have expertise, but how do you create the flexibility that is required in your mental model to see how this expertise can serve somebody else? In Kerala, there's a classroom conversation going on. and a person says, little kid, standard 4 kid, he says, "Ma'am, I don't seem to remember the sequence of colors on the national flag of India. I forget whether saffron is at the top or green is at the top." Ma'am says, "Are you from Kerala?" "Yes." "Your mother serves you some rice on a banana leaf?" "Yes." "The color of the banana leaf is what? Green. Color of rice is white. And then she puts some sambar dal on top, which is saffron. Now, do you remember the sequence of colors? Saffron at the top, white in the middle, green down there." And immediately the kid's eyes light up. He begins to sense that knowledge has been brought to him, to his own experience space. This is Karma Yoga. And Arjun is told by Krishna, "See, your skill is fine, you are the best archer that we know, but you still have to go a long way. You surrender, you give, you offer your skill to a cause larger than yourself." In this case, this is called Krishna. And Krishna is that intelligence that sort of accepts this and moves on. So think of Azim Premji, who sends a mail after his secretary. Since I talked about sambar and rice, I think you must be thinking of food. I'll close very shortly. All right? So Azim Premji's secretary sends out a mail to 30,000 employees. "Please do not park your car in the place where chairman's car is supposed to be parked. Park anywhere else." Within 5 minutes, Premji is one of the richest men that India has. Third, fourth, fifth richest, whatever. He writes back, he says, no, my secretary got it wrong. This parking space is meant for the person who comes to office first. If I come to office first, I park there. If not, then anybody who comes to office first parks there. Now see what he does. He converts a position into performance. So this is yoga. So what it means is that you're connecting skills to places where skills will only be amplified. So skills by itself is of performance by itself is of no value. I'm a doctor, I can slice an abdomen with a fine knife. That skill is of no value if I use the same knife to kill a person. So skill by itself, the intention behind the skill and the connection that the skill makes with the context of service is what Karma Yoga is all about. And this is what Krishna is telling Arjun, that your being a good archer is of no value unless you are doing this for a cause larger than yourself, and therefore he succeeds. So how do you convert mundane action into something larger? How do you convert work into worship? How do you convert karma into Karma Yoga is the second aspect. The last part is the most important part, is the realm of possibility. We call this Purnatva. First was Dharma, then Karma Yoga, then Purna. What is Purnatva? Most people seem to feel that Purnatva means being full. Now most people don't even go deep into Purnatva as our eternal quest. You ask anyone sitting here, what would be the limit to which he would want to earn money or do things he loves to do? No individual can put a limit to that. We tried this in Harvard. If you put a limit somewhere, you will like to grow somewhere else. So I have seen people who have made a few billions. If you put a limit to your making a billion, no, I want to do something more. So this urge for something more tells us with absolute unerring insight is that there is something in us which can never be happy with anything that is finite. In the domain of the finite, this reality called me is never happy. So what is the investigation? Krishna is asking Arjun to investigate this, and he says, let's see what happens. The battle is over. The Pandavas have beaten the Kauravas, and Krishna gets down from the chariot. I'm going to share this short story with you. And it is unusual. Arjun sees that his driver, who's charioteer, who's supposed to ask him to get down first, he gets down first, and then asks the driver gets down first and then asks the owner to get down, right? So in this case, it was the reverse. So Arjun says, okay, why did he do so? But he obeys Krishna. He first gets down, and as soon as Krishna gets down, the entire chariot becomes a ball of fire and turns to ashes and is gone. So Krishna has explained to Arjun, look, your chariot was under attack. And I was navigating the chariot in a way that you survived, but the moment I stepped down, your chariot was of no consequence. And it struck Arjun at that point in time, and that humbled him. He said, realize that without the intelligence of the large, the whole, My limited view of reality is of no consequence. It turns to ashes unless I'm absolutely connected with something and I feel grateful for it. So that emotion of gratitude connects him with his fullness, with his whole possibility. And imagine somebody who's speaking to you standing here, delivering a ethics discourse or whatever, and he's wearing a suit that is crafted somewhere in New Delhi and shirt that comes from Mumbai, glasses comes from China, his brain is an accumulated gift of his parents, his teachers. Suppose all of these were to be given away to their legitimate owners, this person's voice also comes because his parents decided to marry and the voice is a gift of the parents. Even this voice is taken away, so when this person is about to thank you for being here, he can only say, can you see that you will be reduced to a nullity? So Arjun is on his last journey and he sees Krishna in a vision. And he says, why are you here? I just cremated you. I just cremated you. How can you be here in the physical person? He says, Arjun, you thought I was a physical presence. You thought you were a biological event consisting of a lifetime of body that's moving, swirling in cosmos. You are not a biological event, you are much more than that. When you are gone, because you had those virtues, you had those ethical principles of doing the war, you will be remembered by generations to come. When pilgrims lose their way, they will remember of Arjuna. When boys name their children, when parents name their boys, they will call Arjuna's name. In 2012, I realized #1 name for boys in India was Arjun. That's how I wrote that book. And when in a little place called Habitat Center, Cypress building, a professor will come and talk to a bunch of other people about you, you will realize that the word Arjuna is no longer a biological event. Arjuna has transcended time because his gunas, his virtues, the word guna in Sanskrit means a multiplier. It also means qualities. Those virtues will amplify, will multiply and make you live beyond your lifetime. So the question again is, what lives beyond our lifetimes? Why should we be worried about it? Why should we be worried about it? We should be worried about it because that is also us. Why should we have children? Why should we build institutions? Why should we have a Jindal University or a Macquarie University? Why should we collaborate for the future? All these questions will come because you are thinking of life beyond your life, a body beyond your body, mind beyond your mind. And so how does one teach ethics in classroom? How does one make expression of life a reality rather than a mental model? I'm going back to our grandmothers in our traditions were the original storytellers. They were the channels through which ethical principles flowed. In dark rooms, in quiet nights, in moonlit evenings. And a grandmother is asked by a grandson, in my dream there are two wolves that fight all the time. One is dark, one is white. The dark one is quarrelsome, unethical, always fights. The white one is generous, ethical. And they have a fight in my nightmare every night. Grandma, I want to know from you which one of these two is going to win. If this grandma was a 10 commandment type grandmother, she would have said, do this, do that. The white one always wins. But she's an intelligent grandmother. She said, the one that you feed the most will win. And the kid comes out with this resolution that there's a cause and there's a consequence. There's a body and there's a consequence that is not embodied yet. But the consequence will follow the cause. And therefore ethics matters, values matters, because there is dharma, there is the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chatterjee, for this awesome presentation, where he brought ideas from Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, took it in a philosophical track, and arouse what is right, what is correct for all of us in life, and how should we go and think beyond our lives, beyond the body that we have got here. So we'll move on. Now I'll request Professor Nicole Brigg, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor of Macquarie University, to come and address. Most of the times when I see Professor Rajkumar, he's full of positive energy. But today morning, spending 1.5 hours with her, I found out that she's also like a nuclear thermal station. It's very always positive. We should get this done. It should be done. So thank you for this positive spirit that you have given. I have to read a small note on you. You are currently the Pro Vice Chancellor at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, with responsibility for a portfolio that includes international business development, collaborative programs, pathways and scholarships, international relations, student and staff global mobility, and international administration. Prior to this, she was Director International at Griffith University in Queensland, and prior to that, she was Director of the Griffith English Language Institute, where she implemented the Griffith English Language Enhancement Strategy and GLI's award-winning online independent learning strategy. She has also held prior roles as General Manager of Education Queensland International in the Queensland Department of Education from 2003 to 2007, and Manager International in the Queensland Office of Higher Education 98 to 2003. She holds undergrad degrees in political science and Mandarin from ANU, as well as postgraduate qualifications in marketing and business management from Monash and the Australian Companies Directors Diploma. Let's welcome Professor Nicole Brick.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive introduction. Can I say at the beginning a very special thank you to Vice Chancellor Professor Kumar, to Professor Panda, and also to Professor Chatterjee for bringing everybody together for this event this afternoon. I really did not expect to hear something as profound and deep as the presentation that we've just had from Professor Chatterjee. And I've already made my resolution to go away and get a copy of his book and to read it in detail. I think there's much to learn and reflect on in what you've said this afternoon. Can I not take up too much of your time between now and the signing of our agreement and lunch, but instead just give you a quick overview of who we are at Macquarie University, on the assumption that not all of you have had the chance to visit Australia and visit our university, or even know a lot about the Australian system. Our university is in Sydney, in Australia, on the North Shore, in a very leafy, green part of Sydney. Australian universities, on the whole, tend to be quite large. So we have about 42,000 students, but our Faculty of Business and Economics, we have professors here with us today from that faculty, it's about 15,000 students. The location of our university is quite interesting. We're very close to a very large tech park, the largest in the southern hemisphere. And so we have a lot of industry linkages with IT companies, with professional service companies, and with pharmaceutical companies that are located in the park around us. Some of our unique characteristics are that we are the only Australian university to build and operate our own hospital as part of our medical activities. Our business school was one of the very early outstanding exemplars in this area. Some of you may be familiar with actuarial studies. The Macquarie program was the world's first actuarial program at a university. And for most of the last 10 years, our accounting programs have been the largest professional accounting program, certainly in Australia, possibly in the world. We also have done a number of other very interesting things in the world of research. You're probably all using a smartphone of some kind or other, so you'll be interested to know that the researchers who developed Wi-Fi in collaboration initially with the CSIRO and then with Cisco were actually Macquarie University academics. So there's just a few examples of the broad scope of research and activity at our university. We're quite committed to our activity and our relationships in India, and I just wanted to give you a little sense of some of the interesting things that we've been doing here. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to launch a new medical degree, postgraduate medical degree, and it will be the first of its kind in the world, because the students who will be studying the Macquarie medical degree will be required to complete a 6-month placement with the Apollo Hospital in Hyderabad. So it's a very international approach to a medical degree and an example of a very meaningful collaboration between our university and India. We also have been working with a number of your schools to bring free curricula that we have developed around a thing called Big History. I'm not going to try to explain to you today what that is, but if you like TED Talks, just type in Big History onto the TED Talk website, and you'll have a very interesting 15-minute presentation on what that is. It's almost as profound as what we heard from Professor Chatterjee not long ago. So we're working with Indian schools to make available our Big History curriculum. And another activity that we're working on with the school system is around a thing called First Robotics, where you get children to fall in love with engineering and coding and science in general by entering into competitions building robots. And they start from quite a young age. There's a kindergarten competition and a middle school and a senior school competition. And it's just a great way to get kids enthusiastic about science. So that's another example of our commitment in India. Interestingly enough, another area of collaboration is actually Australian academics who are coming to India to teach. And it was fascinating to discover that there are 4 academics on staff here at OP Jindal who are actually Macquarie graduates. So that's another example of our collaboration. And of course students. We've been sending exchange students and students who come to spend some time in India over the last years, and the numbers of students are starting to grow very quickly. And the agreement that we'll shortly sign will pave the way for movement between OP Jindal and Macquarie for students to move back and forwards. Can I just finish by sharing with you some of the questions that are very much on the mind of our university's executive, and which I think probably will resonate also with yourselves as leaders in your university. So one of the first things that we think a lot about at this point in time is actually about the world of technology, and to consider the ways in which technology, both from a teaching and learning perspective, but also in terms of the content that we teach at university, how that's changing what happens at universities. And we don't have all the answers, but it's a constant area of consideration and an area in which we like to discuss with our partner universities around the world, so that together we can learn what this very rapid revolution in technology that we're all living through, what it means for us. It's about social media, it's about artificial intelligence, it's about big data, it's about cybersecurity. So many different aspects of our lives now are being influenced by technology. For us, this is a very enduring theme that we need to worry about and to learn more about. The second is research. It is no longer the case that one university can meaningfully develop a research program that does not have an international focus to it. The flow of information around the world has made that a meaningless concept. And so for us, more and more, we're reaching out to our partners around the world to identify and develop relationships with universities that would like to be part of our collaborative research endeavour. And I think that this is an area where OP Jindal is going to be a very productive partner for Macquarie University. But it's bigger than that. It's much bigger than that. And how to foster and how to, to build that world of collaborative research is very much a question that our university is thinking about. And then the last area I think that we must all ponder is, what is it that students will need in the years ahead? We know from the impact of technology that students are going to have many different careers in their lifetime, where for our generations there hasn't been as much change. And we have to ask ourselves the questions, what can we do to create degree programs and opportunities for our students that are going to better prepare them for a world that we actually can barely imagine in terms of the complexity and the diversity and the change that they will experience. So those are just three things that we're going to be thinking about a lot at Macquarie University. I think they probably resonate with you also at OP Jindal. And I think today is an example of the kind of practical, meaningful exchange around topics of mutual interest that can help us to start answering some of these big questions. And for all the women in the room, I hope to see more of you at these events going forward. It's great to see some of you here today, so we look forward to continuing the dialogue. So thank you once again to OP Jindal for helping to organise this event. It's great to see so many of you here today, and I look forward to talking with you over lunch and through the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nicole.